Hello, everyone, and welcome to El Camino College's Queer Pride event. Today we have Grace Reynolds, our resident student moderator, and Dr. Sherry Nielsen, who is our psychologist, who will be answering the Q&A section of their original video that they posted to our website. I'm going to have us do some introductions now, starting with Grace on my left.
Hi, I'm Grace Reynolds. I'm a first-year student at El Camino College. I'm also part of the El Camino College Gender and Sexuality Alliance, the GSA, and I'm a marine biology major.
Fantastic. And Dr. Nielsen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sherry Nielsen. I'm a clinical psychologist. I work with clients that have severe mental illness, mostly schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and I usually go to visit them where they live in a board care facility. So I see a lot of different behaviors and a lot of different mental illnesses, and I'm here to sort of debunk some of the myths about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's so fantastic and such an important dialogue to have. I know that in your presentation you had shared that you've really seen people who show signs of early mental illness that ignore it really have the potential to spiral to a point in a lot of the clients you work with in board and care where there's no bouncing back. It's kind of past the point of no return. So I think really getting awareness out there as early as possible is such a fantastic thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important thing that someone can take away from any of my presentation earlier or the talk we're having right now, is that early intervention is the absolute key. You know, the longer something has a chance to take hold and manifest, the harder it is to make it go away. So, you know, when you think of a habit, once a habit has been there for years and years, it's really hard to break that habit. But if it's a brand new habit, you can, you know, do some interventions and maybe break that habit right away. And so your brain sort of forms dendrites and neural pathways that think a certain way. And once those become stronger and stronger, it's harder to have those prune back and build new dendrites and neural pathways to different thought processes.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the reasons that early intervention is really important. So you don't want something to become, you know, such a natural, you know, automatic type process. So, and, you know, I know with early intervention, it's really hard because people are afraid, you know, they get these little things that they can't really explain, like, you know, maybe they see a shadow out of the side of their eye and they're like, huh, what was that? And then they ignore it, right?
That was interesting.
Or they hear a whisper, you know, or and they just think, oh, I'm just hearing something, but then it happens again, and then they go, no, this is becoming too familiar, and then it's starting to happen. They're going, you know, I always hear this whisper, and before you know it, it turns into full-blown, you know, auditory hallucinations that are degrading and telling you you need to go jump off a bridge and these kinds of things. And then people actually go and do that. And that's the scary part, you know, is because the longer that you let that manifest, the more it convinces you that it's real. And then it's harder to change your mind that there's something wrong with you. And you just view that as a world view, you know, that, you know, I'm paranoid because these voices are telling me to be so. And you think those are your thoughts, not these outside voices.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, I really like what you're having to say there. For those watching, I've known Dr. Nielsen a very long time. And an analogy she told me about years ago that really has stuck with me as a non-psychologist person who does not know much about psychology was, she had explained these I don't know the terminology, like the neural pathways in your brain as being footsteps in snow, where it's easier to walk through that same path that they've already walked through than it is to go dig a new path around the snow.
Absolutely.
That analogy has always stuck with me because it made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. And that, you know, and that's true with anything, like any negative thoughts you want to change, any, you know, depressive thoughts, or, maladaptive thinking or behaviors, you have to relearn things, and those dendrites have to build, and those neural pathways have to become stronger to where, your brain's going to want to take the easiest route from A to B. It's not going to want to go around over here and then end up over here, because that's hard. Your brain just wants to go fast, and it knows how to do that. So that interruption of the easy, quick route will actually, the harder work you do, the better that you'll profit from it. So
absolutely.
I know for myself personally, I suffer with depression, and that was a big thing that I thought that what I was going through was normal at first. I thought that this was just a normal part of life, but things started to progress and progress. And even after I knew that I had depression, I didn't know what some of the signs were to start seeking that professional help and to start getting help. So do you mind elaborating a little more on when someone or when things start becoming unnormal? Because it's normal to feel a little sad, it's different to feel a little depressed.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things, and I know that one of the questions that I knew was going to be coming was about stigma, I think it was where we were talking about, and the unwillingness to admit that there's something going on because of stigma. So the way to tell that if you're having a depressive episode, a major depressive episode, and that truly needs to be treated, or if you're just in a funk, you're sad. Yeah. There's ways to know the difference. And so what I was going to bring up stigma is we're so easily throwing around words like, oh, that person's crazy, or, oh God, she went bipolar on me. Mm-hmm. Or, oh God, that person's mental. And those kind of words make it harder for someone who really is ill to be able to say, hey, I need help. And so that's really important that, everybody starts to learn, that that's just as bad as some of the words that we've used in the past and we've learned that are no longer okay to use, with different races and different, gender orientations and stuff. There's words that are just not okay. And I think this is something that needs to come to light for the, clinical population with mental health disorders, is that they are now, they're one of the groups that hasn't had their, equal rights of don't call me this because it's hurtful. Mm-hmm. And so because of, I call it the euphemism treadmill. I heard that on something I thought that was really interesting, where, every so many years, a new euphemism or new acronym or something is born, and it's basically just describing the exact same thing that this did, but we come up with better language. You know why? Because people take that newer language and then they apply it in a negative or derogatory tone. And then that new language no longer is clinical and proper. So we have to create a new piece of language that is clinical and proper, because, at one time, it was completely appropriate and in medical terms to use the word retarded. And that is not, that's a derogatory term nowadays. You don't say that anymore. So they've had to come up with new words along the way. And so some of those words like bipolar, oh, she's bipolar, well, no, did she just snap at you because she's mad? That doesn't mean she's bipolar, So depression is one of those. People say, "Oh, I'm so depressed.
I'm so depressed. Yeah.
I'm so depressed. Oh my God, I'm so depressed.
My favorite character died. I'm depressed." On a show. Yeah.
God, I'm so depressed. No, you're sad. You hate your life, but you're not depressed. And so depression is a lot more than just feeling sad or feeling like things are just uncomfortable. And just don't like what's going on right now. So some of the things for depression that you really want to look for, and I'm going to go over the DSM diagnostic criteria. Yeah. Okay. So basically, if you have clinical depression It has to be that you are experiencing 5 or more symptoms during the same 2-week period. Okay, so it has to last for at least 2 weeks or more. Okay, and you have to have 5 of these symptoms, at least 5. A lot of people have more. A lot of people just be on the cusp, like, oh, I got 4. So yeah, they're right on the edge there. But one of those symptoms has to be having a depressed, sad mood, or the loss of interest in pleasurable things. So you no longer go take your dog for a walk. That you used to love doing that, but now you just don't even go do it. Sex, people don't even want to have sex anymore. It used to be pleasurable. Now they have no interest. So that there's either a loss of interest in something that was pleasurable, or you have this saddened mood. And this has to last for a whole 2 weeks, plus 4 more of the ones I'm going to say right now. So it's depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day. A marked diminished interest in pleasure in all or most activities of the day, nearly every day. And then there's significant weight loss or weight gain, increases and decreases in your appetite. There's going to be a slowing down of your thought processes, and probably a slowing in movement. You know, you find yourself walking a little slower, just sort of taking your time, putting this over there, just not real purposeful movements. And for others, it could be being very restless and high anxiety. There's going to be, it could be fatigue or loss of energy every day, feelings of worthlessness or exercise or inappropriate guilt nearly every day. A diminished ability to think or concentrate, or being indecisive nearly every day. Recurrent thoughts of death, recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan or a suicide attempt, or a specific plan for committing suicide. So to receive this diagnosis of depression, these symptoms must cause the individual clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. And they cannot be related directly to a substance abuse or another medical condition. And sometimes, if you think you have depression and a lot of these symptoms you're feeling, and it's not true depression, it could be a thyroid issue. So problems with the thyroid often mimic depression. So a good mental health professional will have you go have your thyroid checked out as well, if you're never been diagnosed with depression and you're having these symptoms. So basically it's almost like they say not to use it like a recipe book, these like, oh, I have A, B, C, and D, I must be clinically depressed. And you can't diagnose yourself. You have to go to a professional. You have to, but if any of these things come to your awareness and you're like, wow, gosh, that sounds like me, then yes, go talk to somebody. If they tell you you're not depressed, great. If they tell you you are, yeah. And if they tell you, hey, you do have depression, then that's great too, because you can get help. You can get some medication to help you. You can get therapy to help you. You won't feel alone. You'll feel like, hey, I've got a plan. And anybody with a plan feels hope. So that's basically depression in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. Oh, and while we're on this, I just wanted to put out there, anybody who is going through some suicidal ideations or contemplating or are feeling like they really need some help, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the phone number is 1-800-273-TALK. Okay, that's 1-800-273-TALK. And call them, get some help, and you're not alone. Okay.
Yeah, I know along with that number gets a lot of press around the depression community, and some people say it doesn't help, other people say it does. I know for me personally, that's helped a lot. So that's anyone who's watching. I have relied on that number a lot of times, and it's amazing the people who answer those calls.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Grace. That's really, I like to hear that feedback that it does help. And I think that will give others the encouragement to use that hotline as well. It could be that people who say it didn't help, maybe they were at a deeper level of depression to where maybe they even needed to go inpatient or something. You know what I mean? Or maybe they just happened to get somebody they didn't click with, that they didn't feel understood or something. But thank you for using that, and thank you for plugging that. I think that's really great.
Yeah. So I know that you work with a lot of trauma patients, and so do you notice a correlation, or not necessarily a correlation, between being LGBT plus and trauma? Like, do you get a surplus of LGBT patients, or is there any connection in any way to those?
Okay, so it's basically a chain of events throughout the lifetime, and we know that LGBTQ individuals are at a higher risk of sexual abuse as a child, bullying, hate crimes, parental neglect, all kinds of different things that cause early childhood trauma, right? And early childhood trauma has poorer outcomes than if you suffered a trauma as an adult, because the coping mechanisms aren't instilled yet. Like, you haven't learned how to cope with things in more logical, rational ways. So as a child, you may start to fantasize, or, which we call dissociating, to deal with those traumas, which leads to like the development of that coping style, which could lead to, using delusional thoughts to escape trauma, So I wouldn't say it's causative. I would say that, there's a really high risk of being traumatized. Let me just read out, I've got some stats here. Let's see. Childhood sexual abuse is a strong predictor of schizophrenia in later life, and it is a contributing cause in 17% of cases of psychotic illnesses, including schizophrenia. And it says the worse the abuse, the more it increases the risk of developing psychosis. And someone who's experienced non-consensual sexual intercourse before the age of 16 is 10 times more likely to develop schizophrenia. And those that were severely traumatized as children were up to 50 times increased risk of developing schizophrenia. That's high risk.
Big number, yeah.
Huge number, right? So there's this theory out there, and it says victims who describe sexual abuse being accompanied by demands for secrecy, like you've been molested or traumatized in some way, and you're told, don't tell anybody, so they keep it secret, right? And so, and that's very common of anybody with sexual abuse, they don't tell anybody because, the perpetrator has made it to where they're too afraid to talk about it, right? They've threatened them or what have you. So, so what happens is they start to block social engagement because it's too painful to socialize with others with this secret, right? And so they start to become very isolated and secretive, and they don't share. And so that we found that with younger children who have these big secrets, and let's face it, a lot of kids have said when they were growing up, they felt they had a big secret of being gay. Yeah. Right. And holding that secret. Right. So I'm not saying that this is an actual predictor. All I'm saying is, I wonder if there's a correlation with this,
right?
Because they're saying that children with sexually abused carry the secret. The secret tends to isolation, and then that develops psychotic symptoms. Okay. So, let's say you've got a boy who happens to be gay, doesn't know it yet, hasn't come to terms with it yet, is a child, he's got these thoughts, knows he's feeling different, doesn't know what to do with those thoughts, keeps it very secret. At the same time, he is also at risk for being traumatized and sexually abused because of nuances in his behavior that may tip off predators, you know, that this child is insecure in his sexuality or not going, you know, there's different cues that can be picked up, and it's not the child's fault at all. It's
Right.
obviously the perpetrator's fault for being a creep, but that's a very, very,
Very
technical
scientific
term. Yes, it's a very doctoral term. So anyway,
I identify with what you're saying very much, though. Right, I'm an openly gay man, and growing up, I definitely felt like I went to Catholic school. I felt like I had to suppress everything, mainly because I didn't even understand it yet. Like, I was like, you know, coming out queer, you kind of go through these phases where you're like, okay, like, I like you kind of like not delude yourself. I don't know the word, but you like tell yourself, right? Like, oh, like I have a crush on this girl because that's what society expects of me, even though I don't really. Like, yeah. I'd rather play Barbies with them than date them. Like, right? Like,
well, and it is trying to fit in.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, but no, I definitely see that, because I definitely felt my kind of 4th, 5th grade experience through about 8th, 9th grade was very much that. Well, I came out around 10th grade in high school.
Right.
Right. Was very much that, like, kind of suppressing like a secret, right. And then, like, you know, just coming to terms with your identity, right? It's not an easy thing to do.
Right. And, you know, in my personal clinical experience working with the clients I work with, and all of them have severe mental illness. And I'm going to say, I've never really done the calculations, but I would say about 80% of them were sexually abused. And there's probably, out of that 80%, probably about 50% of them have had a same-sex relationship of some sort, whether it be wanted or unwanted. You know, they may not identify as LGBTQ, but they've, you know, had the experience. So it goes back to, I mean, I keep thinking chicken egg, like does schizophrenia put you at risk for, you know, being molested, and then, or is it the other way around? You know, does being molested put you at risk for schizophrenia? You know, and it's hard to tell, but there definitely is like a cross between different risk factors that creates that storm. And sexual abuse is one of them. And we know from, you know, the statistics that many children who start to display signs of same-sex orientation, they're at an elevated risk for maltreatment. And
does this count as well with like verbal, mental, physical abuse as
absolutely.
well? Because I was thinking, because it might not necessarily be sexual, but
yeah, and the traumatic experience is based upon the person's resilience. So there's different factors that, you know, a child is either very resilient, things bounce back of them, don't seem to bother them. Then there's one that you look at sideways and they're crying in the corner. So, you know, there's different, you know, so it's going to affect everyone differently, you know. It's just sad. It's really sad.
It's sad.
It's really sad. It's a very sad subject to talk about, but we need to talk about it.
Right.
You know, it has to stop.
Right.
Yeah, and as a community, like, you know, we really need to rally together, right? Like, being queer is all about supporting your fellow queer brothers, sisters, and non-binary friends. And we should extend this to our brothers, sisters, and non-binary friends who may be suffering from mental illness, right? Just that same blanket of support and warmth that we extend.
Yeah, I have a question with that is, how can we be better, or like, how can the LGBTQIA+ community, what tools can we use to better process our shared traumas and stuff like that?
Yeah, and that's a great question. basically treat others as you would want to be treated, like the throwing around words, like, oh, she's bipolar, those things that needs to be stopped, I think.
Absolutely.
Because that perpetuates the stigma.
Right.
So as far as let me see, let me just look through my notes a little bit here and give you some idea.
Yeah, because I definitely feel like as a community, right, we intersect a lot with traumas, right? They may not be the exact same type of trauma, but
absolutely,
we share similarities, right? There's, whether like queer people also might have an abusive parent, whether that's because of alcoholism or homophobia, transphobia, whatever that might be, like it's still like trauma from a parent, right?
Yeah, and that parental trauma is probably one of the most damaging ones. Severe abuse and neglect by a parent is so damaging. It's probably one of the worst causes the most destruction, is what I should say. Okay, so I found what I was looking for. So some of the tools that the LGBTQIA plus community can use to better process shared individual traumas. First of all, get professional help. You just got to find out, knowledge is power. You can't fix something that you don't know about. You can't go change your own oil in your car if you've never had, you don't even know that there is oil that goes in a car, so you need to get educated. Use psychoeducation. It's huge. Know about it, ask questions. Watch YouTube videos about things that you're curious about. You can find out anything you want on, just by doing a Google search or watching YouTube if it's too embarrassing to ask or to go, let somebody know, hey, I'm feeling this way. But definitely get some help. So major depressive disorder is actually the most common mental health problem related to trauma. Okay. And getting the treatment, which is usually cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps you process your negative thoughts and kind of look at them from different perspectives and change the way you feel and think about things. And that combined with an antidepressant is the first line of treatment. So one can help, the other can help, but the best outcomes are when you combine the two. So an antidepressant, I can't even tell you how important that is. I try to explain it, like my clients will tell me, I don't want to take my medication. I don't like the way it makes me feel. And I'm like thinking to myself, how can I get this person to understand that this medication is so important to them, right? And what I'll tell them a lot of times is, okay, so if you had diabetes and you had to take insulin, would you take your insulin? They said, well, yeah. And I said, so why won't you take your antipsychotic or your antidepressant or whatever it is that they're taking? I said, because I'm not sick. And I said, well, okay, well, put it this way. You're sick. I don't say it like that, but I kind of point out some of the struggles they're having. And then, and what I usually try to do is make it to where their brain is just another organ, like, so when you have diabetes, your kidneys aren't producing the insulin to process the sugar, and then that creates this set of symptoms for diabetes. Well, with your brain, your neurotransmitters aren't producing the serotonin, so that's producing this set of problems. So if you could take something to fix your insulin and not have that problem, you could take something to fix your neurotransmitters so you won't have that problem. And then they started to look at it more on a biological thing rather than, oh, she thinks I'm crazy, she wants me to take medicine, and so approaching it from a biological standpoint, I think I get a lot further with them in medication adherence and compliance. So something you could maybe talk to somebody, let's say you have a friend who have severe depression, and you're trying to talk them into, you really need to go see somebody, possibly get on some medication. And they're like, I don't need medication. I'm not
There's
crazy.
nothing wrong with me.
There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not taking that. I don't like the way it makes me feel, Well, if you can explain it to them through that biological rationale, it's hard to argue with. It's hard to argue with the fact that one of your systems is not functioning right. And all you need is this little help with it, and you can function right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one, another thing. And I wanted to talk about EMDR, that's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And this is a specific type of therapy that incorporates cognitive behavioral therapy, but it also uses eye motion. And, it's like you follow it with your eyes. And they first learned about it with treating PTSD with combat soldiers that were having, severe PTSD symptoms. And they found that they're able to process through those traumatic events. But it has to be done under very controlled circumstances and with somebody who knows what they're doing. And I've seen great success with this type of therapy, especially in getting unstuck from something that you just can't get past, like a trauma that happened and you're just stuck. You just can't move past it. This can help get you unstuck and be able to move forward and have a more fulfilling life.
Yeah, I actually, I went to therapy when I was in my early 20s, and my therapist did that with me, and it was I found it to be very, very successful in my experience and being. Grace, you were going to say something a little bit ago.
I was just going to mention how I myself was on, or am still on, antidepressants, and that used to be a big deal for me. Like, I didn't want to be on them, and I think like that also has to do with stigmatization of medication. If you take this medication, if you take this medication, you're crazy. Like, I know it was even hard for my parents to let me take this medication, but they realized, and soon I had to realize, that I needed this. And I didn't realize this until I didn't take my medication for a week. I did some sneaky maneuvers, like
rebound depression is real.
And I took it for a week, and I just got to a point where I couldn't get out of bed one day. Like, I had to leave for school, and I couldn't. And that whole day, I just was completely.
Yeah. And like tears coming out of your eyes and you don't even know why.
Right.
Like it's really, really, really hard. Yeah. That rebound depression is usually significantly worse than the initial depression.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question for this conversation, actually. So I have a family member, and I imagine this is an experience that happens a lot in the community, right? Where you're on your pills, let's say a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and you're just feeling great, and you don't feel like you need them anymore because you're just feeling so great because your body's used to having insert pill for however long, and then you just kind of stop taking them, and then it's like the dominoes start to tip. Like, how do you recommend, like, family members, loved ones, allies, helping them to get back on track if we start to see these types of habits, or rather this behavior happening or starting?
Right. And I see that a lot. And so it's like bump that up on steroids kind of level with my clients, because when they go off their medication, I mean, they're really psychotic, and dangerous to themselves. They can get hurt. They can wander out into streets and jump in front of cars. And it's very, very, very dangerous. But I see it all the time. I feel so great. I don't need this medication. Well, no. You feel great because you're on the medication. And so I try to reiterate that, oh no, I'm not sick. I don't have it anymore. I'm cured. There is no cure, so you feel great because you're taking your medication. Don't stop taking your medication. That's the best thing I can say. And God, nobody wants to say, oh my God, I have to take this medication. But you'd be surprised if you asked how many people take it, but you don't know about it.
Yeah.
And it's,
there's nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. Would you be ashamed that you need to take insulin?
Yeah. I take my multivitamin every day.
Well, shame on you. Wow, you must be really
Right. I've got some bone deficiency. I'm lactose intolerant.
Oh my God. That's terrible.
I couldn't imagine.
Right. Yeah. So take your multivitamins for your brain and your body.
Yes, yes. And take those other medications your mental health professionals prescribe for you, because they know what they're doing. And if you're feeling better, it's because of the medication. So don't
How can
go
we,
off of it.
in the same vein, how can we, same question, better support, better foster understanding, help our be allies when we have those friends, family members who they tried medication, you finally convince them, and then they have like an allergic reaction, or that specific brand doesn't work, and they're like, never again. Nope, didn't work for me.
Right. And that happens so often. They give it one shot.
Yep.
You know, they finally get the courage to say, okay, I'll try it, and they feel coerced into trying it.
Right.
And
Right. Because
they'll say,
everyone's
I'll
bullying
try
them
it.
into it. Air quotes.
Exactly. I'll try it, and then something goes wrong, or like you said, it wasn't the right medication.
Wasn't the right one for
allergic
them.
Reaction.
Yeah.
Some side effects they didn't like, something goes wrong, and then it's, nope, I don't need this. And then they were on the medication for a little while, then they go off of it, and then they spiral down really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And because you can't just go off your medication, you need to titrate down. Stopping medication cold turkey can bring on an onset of problems, and it will just knock your neurotransmitters out of whack really bad. So if you are going to go off medication, do it under doctor's care. Have them help you titrate down and titrate off. And but trying to get them to try a second medication is really, really hard. Yeah, I've experienced that with some people too. And at one point I basically had to have an intervention with somebody to say, hey, look, you need help because you're making me too worried. I can't handle this. And after an hour of emotional pleas and tears and begging them to please just give it one more try, they reluctantly agreed, and it worked out well. But just don't give up on them. Don't give up on them. Don't let them, when you see that they're in so much pain and they tell you they're okay, keep asking. You have to keep asking. Don't believe it when you can see otherwise.
Something I've learned as an ally is that to not take depressive lash outs personally. They're not trying to hurt me. They can't help it, right? And to not take it personally. They don't love you any less. And sometimes they're really, really mad at you and you have to pull them by the ear and force them into getting help. But
I'm really glad you brought that up because, the personal lashing out, if I told you how many of my clients came in and cussed me out and never wanted to talk to me again, and then they come back the next week and act like nothing happened, they don't remember it. They don't even know that they called me a biatch and all these other things, right? And so you can't take it personally. It's just a side symptom of what they're going through.
And the hurt feelings, if you still have them, in my experience as an ally, is a conversation you have once you're in a better place of mind. When you can be like, okay, you're in a better place you're a better headspace. Now can we talk about like that this did hurt my feelings. I understand, but I just want recognition or validation or
right. Yeah. And other things that you can do to keep yourself from getting, some tools we were talking about. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get back on track to, like, we asked for some tools on what you can do. So exercise and movement really help your body with its natural equilibrium. And also allow yourself to feel your feelings. Don't stifle your feelings. Process them. Let them come up. Think about them. If you can't talk to somebody about them, journal them. Sometimes it's even really helpful to, when you journal, don't do it, in the way we do now by typing. It's really, really effective to have a pen and scribble out what you want to say. Write it as furiously and fast as you can, and get all that pain out, and underline it, and and write it in capitals, and bold letters, and then when you're done, you tear it up and you burn it, and it's so releasing. So if you don't have someone to talk to, that's something that you can do to process some of that strong emotion.
I like that you bring that up, especially in kind of the theme of pride, because I feel like these are also things a lot of queer people are told to do with the coming out process, right? Because there's these stages and anger.
And the thing about journaling, there's different kinds of journaling. There's journaling where you just want to document your life. And then there's journaling that you need to actually process through things. And you really don't want to ever go back and read that again, or you do want to, and you can save it and you can read it. But I believe that there is a physical process involved in actually writing out with a pen the words that you're saying and thinking and feeling. It's kind of like goes from the brain to the hand, it's different than typing. And I know that it's so much easier to just type because that's what we're used to. But this is a totally different process. This is more of a physical exercise than just mentally putting your stuff down in words. So I like that idea. And then you have to remind anyone who's been through trauma, tell yourself that anything that you're feeling that feels not right, or making you unhappy, or making you feel bad, that these are normal reactions to very abnormal events. Okay.
Especially in COVID as well. That also applies to COVID.
Right. And so so I wanted to talk about the stigma thing some more, and how can we destigmatize mental illness? And so many LGBTQ people have reported experiencing stigma and discrimination when accessing health services.
Yeah.
Okay. And this also comes to, if they're feeling this, like they don't feel heard or seen with a doctor, how are they going to feel with a mental health professional? So that's going to be harder for them to access services and get the services they need. So there's also that feeling of being rejected by your family, that can make you feel like there's something wrong with you. My family has rejected me. And that creates an internal stigma of your own. And then you look at others as, rejecting you, and so that's another perpetuation of this stigma. And just be open and supportive. I think that makes a huge difference in the outcomes of, the lives of LGBTQ people. So, let me see if there's anything else on stigma I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and I think too, like when it comes to stigma, and I'm sure Grace has stuff she'd love to chime in with this too, right? When it comes to stigma, right, of just being a queer person, and like there's like the stigma that all gay, like if like when I go to the doctors still, like in like 2020, like it's always, I feel like they ask me more as a gay man, right, if I want an HIV test than they do like heterosexual people, right, and things like that. Like I just feel like they ask things, or they like, I feel like I get like more leading questions about like, oh, are you having like anonymous sex, and like all these, I feel like I often feel very judged, based off of stereotypes, right, and again that ties into stigma. I don't know if Grace, if you've had any experiences or anything.
I've had similar experiences with the doctor, where kind of it's a little bit different for me because like, for example, I got into a car accident like 6 months ago. I got into a car accident and I was okay. Everyone involved in the accident was okay, but I went to the doctor just to get my wrist looked at, and they were going to do an x-ray. And they came in and, like, before, because I'm a woman, they asked, "Are you pregnant?" And I was like, me knowing I'm a lesbian, I was like, yeah, there's no way.
There's no way. Yeah.
And they're like, well, you don't have to use that as an excuse. Like, you can be honest with me. I'm like, I am being honest with you. I didn't directly tell them at first. I was just like, oh, no. And then they're like, are you on any birth control? I'm like, no.
Don't need to.
Like, are you sexually active? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, so there's a chance you could be pregnant. And I was like, well, no, I don't identify that way. And they go, oh, you don't have to use that as an excuse. Like, you can be honest with me. I'm like, I am being honest with you. Like, that kind of stuff happens where it's like that.
Yeah.
Like, you're not really, like, you're just using that as an excuse. I'm like, yeah, it's not. But then I was gonna say something else with stigma. I was gonna say just about how there's a stigma with being depressed and there's a stigma with being LGBT, and
the two together.
The two together, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, you're only depressed because you are LGBT.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not true. I'm depressed because I'm depressed, and I'm LGBT because women are hot, you know? It's like, they don't go together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring something else up, and you know, when you do go to a doctor's office and maybe past experiences have caused you to not want to, you know, reveal your sexual orientation, which is a disservice to the LGBTQ community, because services are appropriated by need, you know, and so if you're not identifying as, you know, with your orientation, then they may not think that there's a need for services, you know. So you know, resources are available to those who have a larger demographic, right? So coming together as one and saying, hey, we need these services is going to help. So one of the outcomes of destigmatization would be better resources for the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think, like, going along with that, like, the resources needed, and that comes into play with doctors, and I think it even starts of when we're in elementary school and we start learning about hygiene and stuff like that, and we start learning about, like, what's the class called?
Like
just,
body, like, yeah.
Where you start, like, learning about your body and stuff like that, yeah. And it's always straight and hetero
yes.
and so it's not accepted, or it's not talked about. And if it's like, if no one's talking about this, why should I talk about this? Like, I'm doing it because of this.
Absolutely. There was zero talk of, like, safe gay sex at all in my schools. We got straight sex, but like zero for gay safety. I went like 4th grade through like 12th grade thinking that if I had sex, I would automatically contract HIV. Like, because there was no lessons or talk about it.
Right. I think I am a little bit younger than you, so I do come from a more updated, but still, even the health, that's the class I was thinking about, health classes that we take, what I've learned about, when I took health, what I learned about LGBT is we talked once about gay male sex and how they're most, like, prone to HIV, not anything else about it, not like coming out, not like that.
Yeah.
It was just stuff like that. And so it wasn't positive view on gay people, for one. It was very negative. And I think that comes with, you know, then kids are less likely to ask doctors because they're like, they separate the two.
Yeah. And then their heterosexual parents oftentimes don't have the answers.
Right. Yeah. And you know, sometimes the parents just, it's not that they're bad people. They just have not had exposure. They don't, they are ignorant because they don't know, and it doesn't mean that they're dumb or closed-minded. They just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching some PFLAG videos and trying to prepare for this. And, one of the things that came across was parents who were just needing to grieve for a little bit at the loss of what their dream for their child was, and that was their dream for their child, and to grieve that dream for a minute and then come back and say, okay, I'm good. You're my kid, and this is this, and everything's fine. But that minute to grieve can be very hurtful to the individual, but you have to also kind of look at the parent needs to be considered as well,
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I know we're rapidly running out of time. Let's do some closing thoughts, final words from everybody. Do you want to take the lead, Grace?
Sure. I guess I will.
I didn't mean to throw you under the bus.
Thank you for that. No, I think this has been a very beneficial talk.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad to have met you, Dr. Nielsen. It's been very
nice to meet you too.
And I think there's always room for learning, and I believe that this talk is very beneficial to those who are watching.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
Yeah, I'll go next. As an educator, as a queer person, I think that it is always important for people who are not you don't suffer from mental illness, you're not queer, you're not whatever. Ask questions. It's oftentimes how we foster understanding for one another. If you don't understand what depression is like, or what being bipolar is like, or schizophrenic, open those conversations. Ask someone, like, what is your experience like? Tell me about your story. I want to better understand so I can help, so I can be a strong ای. I remember being in, back when I was in community college, I was at Harbor College, not Elko. I'm sorry, Elko family. But I was at Harbor College, and there was a woman in my psychology, I think it was abnormal psych class, and she shared with us that she was schizophrenic and how it came on. And she told the whole class, she's like, because we were on the schizophrenia chapter, and she's like, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. And then people ask, what is it like having, she suffered from auditory hallucinations. And people would ask, what are they like? What do they sound like? And she would explain, and people were like, wow, that's like, our heart goes out to you. And you could tell it really shifted people's mindsets, and just opening that dialogue really changed hearts and minds. So don't be afraid to open dialogues with people.
Absolutely. And then I just want to leave you guys with, some healthy ways to cope with, some trauma.
Yeah.
And so we want to be able to reevaluate and redefine what is important to you in life. Okay. You want to increase your bonds with family or friends or whoever your source of support is, spend more time together, even if it has to be on Skype right now, but spend more time with your family. And you want to redefine your sense of purpose in this world and navigate towards that. You also want to increase your commitment to your personal mission. If you have a goal in mind, increase your commitment to that. Stay focused, do something that puts you on a path to something positive with a really good end goal, and revise your priorities to get there. Okay. And then sometimes also being a volunteer or contributing to a charitable cause can help you get your mind off of what's happened to you. And the feeling of giving and doing for others is a very warm, good feeling. So, and also be someone who can just listen attentively to somebody without judging them.
Absolutely. Always pay it forward.
Yep. Pay it forward. Just, even if it ends with, I'm here if you need me. I'm here if you need me.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, you guys, for inviting me to be part of this panel. And I really enjoyed it. And I hope I was able to clarify some questions and concerns.
Yeah, it was wonderful having you. Thanks for moderating, Grace,
Thank you.
being a great student. We have events planned all week long for our Queer Pride. We're very excited. We have Miss Barbecue on the 2nd at 2 doing our live keynote speech. We have our Queer Surviving and Thriving panel as well, same day, the 2nd at 2. Wait, did I say Miss Barbecue at 2? Miss Barbecue's at 6. We're at 2 on Surviving and Thriving, which is, I'm on that panel as well. So you're gonna see a lot of me. But yeah, please tune in for that. It's gonna be great. Miss Barbecue is amazing. I can't wait for you all to meet them. I think that's a wrap, unless there's any final last second things to say.
Yep.
Bye. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay proud, and stay strong. We'll see you next time.